move directly into our next presentation, Unlocking Mechanisms and Working Capital for Business Expansion. And this presentation is going to be made by Darpan Mehta, Director Tax, Asia Pacific International Stores, Amazon, US and India, and Mr. Vivek Somareddy, Vice President Emerging Markets, Seller Experience and Global Trade, Amazon, US and India. We begin by Mr. Vivek Somareddy, who's going to kickstart the presentation, and he will then invite his colleague, Darpan Mehta, to join him. Vivek, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vivek Somareddy. Today I'll be talking a little bit about, as brands and SMEs or as entrepreneurs, when you're starting off, how do you start growing your business? What are some processes and mechanisms you can use to do that? And then moving on to working capital, which is the most foundational for growing a business. What are some tips and tricks and gotchas to manage working capitals? Let me start with the mechanisms. So, definitely common sense thing, definitely do your market research, identify who your target demographics are, who your competitors are, what's the market trends, so that you can craft your product or a service to tune to those needs. A successful product in one region may not receive a similar response in other regions. If you take something as simple thing as coconut oil, right? In the southern region, coconut oil is used for cooking purposes and skincare purposes. It's also part of the cultural practices like temple rituals, Ayurvedic medicine, and so on and so forth. But in the other regions, it's primarily used for skincare, hair care, and such. So you need to understand the nuances so that especially when you're trying to expand beyond certain regions, you need to craft the same product in terms of packaging, how you position it, so that it meets the needs or preferences of the usage patterns in that particular region. Once you've started your business, then comes the thought of scaling it, right? And when we grow big, it's really important for us to maintain adequate control and visibility into what's happening so that you can take timely course corrections. Typically, a business goes through broadly 3 phases, and I call this the what, the how, and the who. The what is when you just started off, you're trying to figure out, hey, what should I give as a product or a service? What should I do to manufacture it? What is the type of service I want to offer? Basically, you yourself as the entrepreneur or the small business are figuring out what to do, right? Then you started your business, and then now probably you're starting to build a team and you're teaching them how to run the business, right? You have a few people, you still have a lot of control. You're overseeing the business on a day in, day out basis, so you still have a lot of control. You're probably defining standard operating procedures, you're probably defining some metrics, you're probably looking day in and day out at what's happening, but you have a team to run it. The bigger hurdle typically comes when you scale well, fortunately, good that you're scaling well, but now you can't be involved in the day-to-day running. So now the question is of who, which means you'll need to go find the right team to run the business for you. But as you do that, how do you make sure you stay connected? And that's where, KPIs or metrics come into play. And how do you get those metrics so that you can audit your business on a day in and day out basis? Invest in some softwares so that you can get those metrics. For example, if you're managing goods and inventory, you have a good warehouse management, inventory tracking system, order management software if you're running a multi-channel business. Definitely an accounting software to make sure you reconcile your stock and cash positions. Investing early in some good software will help you get the metrics so that you can keep track of what's happening with your business as you scale big. Building a brand. Understanding your target audience and working backwards from the target audience for your brand strategy is important. Take the example of if you're a clothing brand and your target audience is 18 to 35 years old. You need to make sure your brand name and logo resonates and resonates with this type of target population. And this age cohort, the brand message is be yourselves. So that's the brand message your brand should be communicating. And the reason for creating a brand is that you can command a premium. A brand is a relationship. So customers always aspire to have the relationship with the brand. And with that, you will be able to command a premium when you're having, when you've created a good brand. And as part of this, don't forget to talk to your customers, to keep listening into what they think of your brand and what experience they believe they're having when, your brand is out there. And building brand awareness, being top of mind, is super important. But with the advent of digital, the investment you make has very good ROI nowadays. You have multiple channels, especially the digital channels, for fast reach to consumers, targeted reach to customers. So you can pick that you want to choose customers' demographics in this particular age range, who have this spending pattern or potential, and maybe just social media savvy. You can just tune your offering to that kind of customer base. So your ROI in terms of marketing expenditure and brand building is getting better and better nowadays. Choosing the right expansion model is simple about like how do you expand? Like you've started growing a business, you need help. You have, of course, a team running, but you want to grow faster. You have multiple options. If you have a product with service, you have a franchisee option. Just make sure you have control over your IP. You're managing a heavy inventory model business, which means you need to do customer order fulfillment. You have 3PL logistics partners who can help you do that. The big differentiation of a successful business versus a not so successful one is knowing and having visibility into customer feedback. So again, make sure you are thinking about setting up plugins or a closed loop mechanisms so that you're always listening to your customers. Getting customers is hard, retaining them is doubly harder. So once you start listening to your customers and tuning your products or customizing your offering, you can expect to build certain amount of loyalty. Now imagine a case where you went to a hotel chain and then depending on your needs, your group's needs, they were able to customize the package for you. You will remember that and that will resonate and you will start building that loyalty. So having that ability to get customer feedback is the most important one because then you can take the right level of course correction at the right speed. I touched upon this a little bit before when I talked about scalable operations. Make sure you define KPIs for your business or key performance indicators and look at them in a day in and day out basis because that is your control or audit into how you are growing the business. Now let's move on to a common thread when you're starting to scale the business, which is about working capital. That's the foundation of any business. If you're in an inventory business, start next by negotiating credit terms with your suppliers. This is one biggest lever that will improve your working capital situations. Typically, a 30 to 60 day payment terms is something you should negotiate. Definitely understand your order to deliver timeline. The smaller it is, the better your planning cycles, especially if you have peak seasons, like you have seasons where your merchandise sells heavily, then this will allow you to plan that close or ahead in advance with your vendors on an advance basis. An order is not realized when a customer places it. Technically, you should think of that the order is realized when the money from the customer hits your bank account. So if you have a lot of outstanding payments, that's a big risk and something you need to watch out for. A regular review of pending receivables is as important as running the entire business, as it directly impacts your working capital. Again, I talked about a little bit before, invest in a good accounting software that can track your cash flow cycles, your pending receivables, so that you have control of what's happening. Understanding optimized inventory is super tricky and is a big factor into how you plan your cash flows. Suppose you have invested in an inventory management software and you get early signals that some inventory turns is reducing. So that's an early indicator, and you should probably plan for liquidating well in advance so that you can recoup the best possible remuneration from it. Work with your vendors and manufacturers. I talked about the order to delivery timeline. And also don't hesitate to negotiate the least minimum order quantity you can take care of. All of this really will play into your working capital needs. Managing cash flow fluctuations, especially important if you have peaks where you need to plan for 3 to 4 times the regular sale of inventory. Periodic review of top performing products. Typically in any business which is a product line, 20% of the products gives you more than 80% of the business. So reviewing your top performing product, not just looking at how fast they're selling, but whether you have accounted for damages, returns, obsolete inventory, so that you can plan that into the pricing and you don't lose money as the sales velocity increases. This is one thing you need to watch out for. As you're scaling a business, this falls by the wayside. You have pending receivables, you have obsolete inventory, you may have tax refunds you have not looked at for quite a lot of time. When all of this adds up, it becomes a working capital crunch. So the softwares you invest in terms of order management, warehouse management, cash flow management softwares are super important so that you are aware and you can take care of some of the working capital issues. Finally, it's becoming a lot more easier to secure working capital. It used to be traditionally very difficult with a lot of documentation required. With the growth of fintech, NBFCs, the access is a lot simpler and easier. Definitely also explore the MSME credit guarantees extended by government for your working capital needs. So that's it from me. Now I'll hand over to Darpan to talk about the tax aspects and compliance as you scale your business, scale and expand your business into an omni-channel mode. Thank you and wishing you all the best.
Good afternoon, folks. So as you know, just following up and building on one aspect that Vivek stressed upon, which is the linkage of managing your tax function with the impact it has on the business's working capital. And I'll use the next couple of minutes to talk about some of the experiences we've seen with sellers, especially sellers who go omni-channel, sellers who start selling online, sellers who start selling online in one state and then want to expand to multiple states. What are some of the tax touch points that they need to take care of when they initiate that journey? And more importantly, as they grow in that journey, what are some of the experiences we've seen sellers having and what are some learnings from those experiences? So I'll use the next couple of minutes to touch upon those things. Moving on to the next slide. So, and this probably is more relevant for any seller who's looking at an omni-channel strategy and considering online as one of the channels they want to expand in. I'm going to just talk about some of the unique aspects of tax that become relevant when you go online. And just to set the context, I mean, GST is now 6+ years old. I still call it a very young law. And we continue to see a lot of changes in the technology, processes, both at the government's end as well as what is expected from taxpayers, as well as changes in the legislation to adapt to the requirements of the business. So with that context and in this space, I think we'll continue to evolve, which is another reason to be very aware of it and keep yourself updated. So the first point here is that last year, as late as last year, 6 years after introduction of GST, the government made a very important change which created parity between the GST law applicable to you when you sell offline with the GST registration requirements that are applicable to you when you go online. So before this change last year, for every rupee for even a rupee of sale online, you had to get a GST registration. And that was not the requirement for offline sellers when they're selling in their same state or for composition dealers who are selling in their state. So in a very foresighted move, the government made changes to the law and said, if you're a small seller, if your annual turnover is less than 40 lakhs per annum, if you're a composition dealer, you're in the composition scheme and your turnover is less than 1.5 crores, and you want to sell online, you want to explore whether an omni-channel strategy works for you, you're in the initial stages of exploring that, we will not burden you with the whole rigmarole of GST registration. You can obtain a very simple enrollment ID with basic KYC and start selling online. just like you were selling offline within the same state. I think it's a very progressive change. It's an enablement that especially small sellers can consider as they start their omni-channel strategy. It's come into effect only a couple of months ago, so people are still sort of trying to understand the processes, but there's a good amount of information available, and the experience is relatively straightforward, and technology will build around simplifying it further. And once you've registered, for all other categories of sellers, especially good sellers, if you're larger than 40 lakhs turnover, or if you're larger than 1.5 crores and you're not in the composition scheme, to sell online, you need a mandatory registration, just like you need to sell offline. So that's that's not incremental to selling online. I think the incremental thing is that, a lot of and this has been our experience, a lot of offline sellers, obviously because of the nature of that business, are fine to sell within their state, because you need the infrastructure to sell within their state. But one of the opportunities that online offers is to expand to other states using the platform that the marketplaces offer, using the warehouses that are available to place your inventory, and you don't necessarily need all the infrastructure that you would have typically needed if you wanted to sell offline in another state. Having said that, from a GST perspective, it's very critical that, because the law today still requires a seller who goes to another state to go and obtain a GST registration in each state, because that's the nature of our GST law. You need to have a principal place of business in that particular state, and the government has recognized the concept of shared offices that can be used as principal space of business, appointing an authorized representative and ensuring that books of accounts and records are available at that principal place of business. So at least there is a simplified, there is a recognition that as you go online, expand your online business to other states, there is a mechanism available for you to comply with the requirement of the law. And we keep explaining to the government how this could be further simplified, but this is what the current law requirement is. And in addition to registering your own principal place of business in that state, you also, the moment you place inventory in the warehouse of a marketplace in that particular state, you also need to register the warehouse as an additional place of business. The registration processes, in my experience, have been simplified over a period of time, and there is a good amount of clarity on what documentation is required. It needs a fair bit of upfront preparation because you need to be aware of what needs to be submitted so that there is no back and forth. Coming to this next piece, which is as you build your business, and I think this is relevant whether you're offline or online. The three areas that we've seen, tax impacting working capital is what I wanted to touch upon. So the first is that given the manner in which the government has designed the GST system, and given that the supplier is now effectively responsible to ensure that his vendors have filed their GST returns, have reported the transactions that the vendor has had with you in their GST return, and that GST credit flows to your account in the government portal, and you do the transaction level matching. We've seen, a lot of sellers, and especially as they scale, struggling to implement this because this is something that is quite dynamic. That information keeps getting updated. It's typically not something you can manage manually. So Vivek spoke about using softwares for accounting. There are softwares available for you to manage this kind of reconciliation. And this is one of the biggest areas where we've seen working capital being impacted, because if your vendors are non-compliant and you're not able to claim the credit, input GST credit of the purchases you do from them, you're going to have to pay the output liability from your own pocket. You won't have credits to utilize. And this is an area I keep telling people to focus on: technology, processes, enforce this through your vendor contracts, enforce this through the vendor education and training, and have a very close eye on this on a regular basis, because compliant vendor can always turn non-compliant if your watchful eyes is not on that process. The next one is, and this is unique to online. So when you sell online, the marketplace is required to withhold effectively 2% of your sales as a TDS, 1% under GST and 1% in income tax. there are avenues available. So in the income tax side, there are avenues available based on how you planned your business projections, your past income tax returns to reduce this rate. And we've seen sellers being prepared and organized to avail those lower rates. So that's something I encourage sellers to invest upfront in. And on the GST side, while there are no avenues available to reduce this rate, you always have the opportunity to claim as a refund because it goes into your cash balance and you're entitled to claim a refund. My experience with sellers is that their books and records and reconciliations are not in order for them to be able to support the claim of the refund, and that creates a lot of churn. So the point that I made earlier on ensuring all of that is in place becomes critical to ensuring that if this 1% TCS is in excess of your output liability, then you're able to immediately process the refund and get it without blocking it for a long time. And this underscores the need for having an end-to-end compliance and reconciliation systems. It's good to see that there are softwares available now for all sizes of business. Sophisticated ERP systems have incorporated these things for as you grow larger, but there are solutions available even for smaller businesses and medium businesses as they scale. And I'll end with this, that these are some of the basic requirements, and again, not unique to online except the last one. The government is progressively tightening the system and making it complete. E-invoicing, for example, came for your vendors when they sell to you, and it came progressively for large vendors and then not so large vendors. And similarly, HSN requirements progressively became mandatory depending upon the size of your business. It's either a 4-code HSN or a 6-code HSN. And the GST returns are getting simplified. So I think to summarize, given the seamless and technology-driven architecture of GST and the amount of information that's available through the entire value chain, you're sort of in the middle and likely to get impacted if you don't look at it end-to-end and have the ability to produce data and reconciliations real-time and have a very close eye on whether any working capital is getting blocked due to input GST, credits being lost, or the TCS and income tax refunds not being available to you. So that's the experience we've seen sellers going through, and I hope that is useful for you as you think of an omni-channel strategy and scale. Thank you.